video for NooBTooB Gaming 101's first assignment, Darksiders. Early in the month, I asked the community to go ahead and play Darksiders. Seemed like I got an overwhelmingly large response from them. I'm very happy with the community. I got 68 replies in the thread and about 2,300 views, so big props out to everybody who played it and everybody who participated. So this video I'm going to go ahead and discuss some of the finer points and highlight some of the aspects of the game that we talked about in the thread, and I'm going to provide my own insight for that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the game's art style or its aesthetics. It's set in a post-apocalyptic world, which it's interesting because it's modern day, but the apocalypse, the actual biblical apocalypse, already happened. So there are decaying buildings and just demonic spires all over the place. It's a strange mashup. Fandango said that it feels like playing a Garth Ennis comic book, which Garth Ennis has been writing for Marvel on the Punisher series, so I can kind of see that, how the art style is dark and gritty, but still set in a modern era, a modern space, which I did enjoy. A lot of people complain about the slow start in the beginning, but the part that I liked the most for the setting was the beginning, because it was during the apocalypse. The apocalypse was quite literally happening at that time. Angels were coming down, demons were coming down, and war just appears in the middle of the city, with humans running for their lives and the city being destroyed. I enjoyed that much more than the actual result of it, even though, you know, the resulting world afterwards, I can't remember how long they said after the apocalypse when the real gameplay starts, but the resulting world afterwards didn't have quite that much of a catch to it. It's like all the action already happened, everything went down, and you got to miss it all. So I preferred the setting in the beginning, the little opening sequence, more than what it was. But the art style, I liked it. It was very cool. It was modern with a twist of gothic, and everything mixed from there. We've had lots of people that enjoyed the story, but Three Panels Max mentioned that the story was somewhat generic, which I find rather odd, because the story is not really clear-cut good and evil. Yeah, there's heaven and hell involved, but there's nothing really implied as to what side's good, what side's bad, because your character is a neutral character. He's a mediator. Essentially, in this game, everybody hates him because of it. He doesn't pick a side, so I don't think it's exactly a good versus evil story. And Dyer Mackin also agrees to me. He says, I'm going to quote this literally, that too often there's a feud between two greater powers, and man comes into the story to change everything when they really have no place. And this game probably could have done that, but the nice part is they didn't. Humans are not involved in the story at all. The only time you see humans are in the beginning, where they are being devoured by demons and caught up in this entire war. The story revolves around the mythical creatures and the Horseman War, which is not a human. He may look like a human, but he's not a human. So I really enjoyed that aspect and found that the story was not generic because of it. The characters of the story were done quite well. There's a lot of biblical references, Abaddon, the Angel of Death. There was, I can't remember half the names, but they have a lot of biblical references, and the characters did quite well. I enjoyed the voice acting. I believe it was very well done. War didn't speak a lot, which makes sense. He's only out there to, kick ass. But Realster mentions that overall the character is strong, with Volgrim really shining, and Volgrim is the pretty much the shop owner. I don't understand how he's really shining. Maybe in the first couple hours he was, but after that, the only thing he says is, welcome. Can I sell you anything? Something along that. And he really didn't like any of the other characters, and saying that the old ones, these ancient characters that are in the game, really ruin the game. And I find that quite the opposite. I believe they bring a nice little bit of light to the game, because the old ones are essentially neutral in this war between heaven and hell, much like war. So I did enjoy that. So on to the game mechanics. People are raving crazy about the puzzles. They To me they weren't too difficult. I mean, I didn't find them mostly challenging at all. If I ever got stumped, normally I just got lucky and I noticed something. Um, they're extremely linear. They don't really help you along much at all. And they did include something in the game which I thought would have been great to help out during puzzles if there was a problem, um, in which you are attached um, on your hand by a watcher, some type of entity that is pretty much in charge of war. He's making sure that war stays on the path he's supposed to go down, and you hold down the select button, and he comes out, and you could talk to him. Um, the only problem is he doesn't say anything worth shit. He mentions, hey, you should, we got to go and kill this guy to bring a heart, and some very vague thing that you should know already. I would have much liked to see him involved with, um, if you're stuck on a puzzle, if you can't see where to go next, you hit him and he says, "Hey, over here." Uh, there are times where he actually pops out and does that, but it was obvious where to go to begin with. I would rather use him as a tool when you get stuck, as opposed to him automatically coming out and showing you. Um, I know, and Eptic says that puzzles throughout the levels serve only as a way to increase your time played. I did enjoy the puzzles more so because the combat was really bad. We'll get to that in a minute. But I can see the puzzles really stretched some things out. And when you have 20 puzzles in a row to progress in some areas, such as the Black Throne, it gets pretty bad. So on to the most discussed part of the game, and that's the combat. Essentially, you have your main sword. I think it's the Soul Eater or something badass like that, and you control that with the. I was on the PS3, so you control it with the X button, one button, and maybe you hit the direction and something else happens. But essentially, you're hitting one button over and over again. You have another weapon mapped to another button, and that other weapon sucks. It doesn't do much. So essentially all you're doing is mashing on the X button over and over again. You have a plethora of tools that you can use in combat. Uh, they don't work well either. You pretty much have your sword, and you can block holding R1, and if you block, hit that button and move, you then dash. So the block button and the dash button are essentially the same thing. If you're holding a direction while you hit block, you're dashing as opposed to blocking. Very, very poorly done. Um, and the blocking is useless. Everybody said, Chimera said, I can't really offer any advice except dodge a lot. And that's how the combat feels. Dr. Flibble says dodge, attack, repeat until the creature is dead. That's how the fighting is done. And it's terrible. A few people enjoyed the combat. The game has a lot of similarities to God of War, I'm told. I haven't played a God of War game. I've played God of War-esque games, as they're called, but I haven't played a God of War game, so I'm not entirely sure how close it is, but if that's how God of War combat is, I don't know why the fuck everybody likes those games. Um, combat is terrible. The main gripe I had within the first hour is I wanted enemy health bars. Is it that much to know how close an enemy is to dying, instead of blindly attacking and praying that they're close to death? After hours of fighting the same enemy, you have a good feel of how many hits it takes to knock them down, but it's not the same. I mean, the game also has a lot of similarities to Zelda with the puzzles and the world exploration, the tools and everything like that. And even in Zelda, for the combat, okay, that enemy right there, 3 arrows, it's done. For this, it's very vague. Um, I think the only person that really defended the combat to the death was Lapham King, and he says, I think a lot of people who rag on the combat were too busy trying to play the game like it was in fact God of War. And this got the class pretty riled, because he's essentially saying we're playing the game wrong, and nobody likes that. You play the game how you want to play the game. If the developers, and this was heard out, did their job correctly, in order to beat an enemy without mashing, they would make it almost impossible to kill them with mashing and force you to go through other routes. In this, every enemy mashing is normally your best bet. I think there's only one enemy that I used another strategy on, because I can notice he's covered in this poisonous gas and my fucking boomerang knocks it out of him. One enemy out of hundreds of them. That was the only time I was actually able to identify to use a different strategy, because everybody else, the mashing works just fine, and it's sad that mashing is acceptable in the game. And a lot of people were pissed off because the developers didn't do their job properly to force you to go another route. Lapham says that he did go other routes because that's what he thought the developers wanted him to do, but for a game they need to make it apparent that's what they want you to do and not leave another option. And that was the sentiment felt by pretty much everybody else. Personally, I think the combat's horrible. Last game I played with this style was Castlevania Lords of Shadow, and the combat in that is phenomenal, lacking in some other departments. But I think everybody agrees that for the sequel for Darksiders 2, they really need to scrap everything. Alright, so overall that's the lecture. That's what everybody thought, and it was a pretty good discussion. A lot of people pretty much just explained what they liked about the game, and they didn't really question the game that much. Next time I really want a much better dialogue. The only thing that really got people talking were the combat, so even though Lapham's blind love for the combat isn't very sound, in my opinion, he did get the class talking, so that was always good. For me, it's a good game. I'm happy I got it for free, as I said before, and for the $20 price point, I think it's a good $20 game. I would have not enjoyed it at all if it was a $60 game. So I think everybody's sentiment was shared. I heard $20 was a good place for it. For me, I kept playing for the story. Personally, I love the biblical story. It's not your average, man needs to save the world. It's a tale of revenge and where he fits into the whole scheme of things, and I really enjoyed that. So that's it for the lecture. Probably under a week, I'm a slaving over the next event for July, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Keep watching. Subscribe to me on YouTube if you want. Follow me at Twitter. It's Dr. Gamar, no space or anything like that. If not, keep watching, keep participating. Thanks a lot.